your concern is that the Ukrainians, a country most people can't find on a map, who've received tens of billions of U.S. tax dollars, don't have enough tanks. Right. I think it's a fair question to ask, like, where's the concern for the United States in that?
How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today I bring you a recap of the summit presented by Blaze Media and hosted by Tucker Carlson. Now, this was not your typical town hall interview of presidential hopefuls. No. Tucker was asking some very pointed and serious questions, and he was demanding some real answers. Now, some of the candidates we're going to get to in a minute did very well. Some did not do very well. Some did well on certain things, and they did poorly on others. But this was fantastic. And before I go any further, let's go ahead and jump straight into it. We have quite a bit of ground to cover. The first thing is, let's take a look at the lineup. Of course, Tucker was the host. Then you have Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Tim Scott, and Mike Pence. Now, obviously, there's no Trump here. He would have been a great addition. He would have done fantastic in this format, but he was not there. I believe he had his own event, but that's a different story, and I digress. Let's go ahead and get into the clips. I will link to all the clips that I'm going to show in the description box. I will also link to the entire event, which was about 8 hours long. It was streamed live on YouTube for free. I will link to everything in the box. If you're on IG, visit the link in the bio. Go to the corresponding article on the website. But without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
I'm just interested because all measures are relative. So Russia's bad, Russia's a threat, Putin's evil, got it. But the total body count from Russia in the United States is right around zero. Like, I don't know anyone who's been killed by Russia. I know people personally who've been killed by Mexico. The government of Mexico allows fentanyl to be made in its country and to come over our border.
Yes.
And remittances from Mexico are a huge part of their economy. The Mexican government is party to the murder of hundreds of thousands of Americans. So why is Mexico less of a threat than Russia?
Well, two things. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Okay, but
yeah, and frankly, here's
no Americans killed by Russia,
yep.
Hundreds of thousands killed by Mexico, but Mexico's our ally and Russia's our enemy. How does that work?
Well, I'm not going to pretend like the legislation I have sponsored and I would sign as President of the United States freezes the assets of the Mexican cartels, targets the Mexican cartels, and hopefully eliminates the flow of fentanyl. Because I do agree with you that 70,000 Americans losing their lives on an annual basis is an existential threat to America that we can solve. We don't have to choose. The good news is
would you be willing to say to the Mexican government, your economy runs on factories right over the border, car plants, for example, but many other manufacturing plants, and we're just going to slap tariffs on that and tank your economy, like tomorrow, unless you stop allowing poison to come into our country? Like, why not do that?
That's a very good point he's making about Mexico, because the thing is, we're talking about Russia, Putin's bad, all this and that, but what have they really done to us? Mexico is a bigger threat than Russia is, but I guess it's a bigger game being played here, so we'll move on. That was the end of that clip. Here's another one, and of course, that was your main man, Tim Scott. And here is Asa Hutchinson. Now, he did not do a very good job at all during his particular part of the summit. Here is one clip from it talking about puberty blockers and things of that nature. Let's go ahead and roll this.
And I will stop with this, but you have repeatedly described delaying a child's natural progression from childhood to adulthood through adolescence. You described that as, quote, treatment. And so that raises clearly you've answered the question. You believe it's treatment. You believe, I suppose, that people can change their sex. Because if you don't believe that, you wouldn't call it treatment, would you?
You got to answer the question, man. He's like kind of shell-shocked. It's like, man, how do I answer this question? How do I even really talk to this man and not appear to be a complete fool?
Well, God created two genders, and that's what I have stated. And whenever you look at the decisions on that, no, I don't support that. I wouldn't make that decision in my family about changing genders. And I don't believe that taxpayers' funds should be used for transgender surgery or treatment through Medicaid or Medicare or in our military. I don't believe that should happen because traditionally, whether it's the Hyde Amendment that you prohibit funding of abortion with taxpayers' dollars because it violates the religious commitment of many people, the same principle should apply here.
Okay, interesting. But see, he is talking about, so the context is that Asa Hutchinson has said that the puberty blockers, hormone blockers, things of that nature, it's treatment. It's a valid treatment. So how are you going to say God created two genders, but at the same time say that gender reassignment surgery and these hormones are treatment? It doesn't make any sense. Like his interview was a disaster. Now here's one about the vax. All right, let's check it out.
One of the powers that government did usurp over the past several years is the right to decide what medicine you take in the form of COVID mandates. How did you feel about that? And how many COVID shots did you take? And how do you feel about it now, in retrospect?
How many COVID shots did you take?
0. But I think it's fair, and I can see that you recoiled when I asked you that question. And I don't think, honestly, you should be asking people about their medical care, but that became a matter of public policy. And I do think that the whole country ought to pause and assess, like, what did we just go through? How do we feel about it now? And so it's a very straightforward question.
I'm sure he's vaxxed, but he don't want to answer the question. He doesn't want to answer the question, but I'm sure he's vaxxed. Now, some are going to say Tucker was lying because it was a requirement over at Fox to become vaccinated, but Tucker is Tucker. I mean, you're talking about at the time, the network's biggest star. So if he says, well, I don't want to get it, then I'm sure there's a way for him to get around it. You know, that's kind of how it works. Just like, remember during the lockdowns where they said you couldn't leave your house, but in California, Gavin Newsom and his people were having a brunch at French Laundry while you were in your house locked up. That's kind of how that goes. But I digress. Now, here's your main man, Mike Pence. This was a very interesting thing because Pence was getting pressed heavily by Tucker. He was getting pressed heavily. Let's go ahead and check it out.
We're saying maybe January we'll let somebody transfer some jets.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vice President. Have you? I know you're running for president. You are distressed that the Ukrainians don't have enough American tanks. Every city in the United States has become much worse over the past 3 years.
Yeah.
Drive around. There's not one city that's gotten better in the United States. And it's visible. Our economy has degraded. The suicide rate has jumped. Public filth and disorder and crime have exponentially increased. And yet your concern is that the Ukrainians, a country most people can't find on a map, who've received tens of billions of U.S. tax dollars, don't have enough tanks. I think it's a fair question to ask, like, where's the concern for the United States in that?
Well, it's not my concern. Tucker, I've heard that routine from you before, but that's not my concern. I'm running for president of the United States because I think this country's in a lot of trouble. I think Joe Biden has weakened America at home and abroad. And as President of the United States, we're going to restore law and order in our cities. We're going to secure our border. We're going to get this economy moving again. And we're going to make sure that we have men and women on our courts at every level that will stand for the right to life and defend all the God-given liberties enshrined in our Constitution. Anybody that says that we can't be the leader of the free world and solve our problems at home has a pretty small view of the greatest nation on earth. We can do both. And as President of the United States, we will secure our border, we will support our military, we will revive our economy and stand by our values, and we will also lead the world for freedom under my administration.
So that was very interesting. Now, some are going to talk about the whole thing about it's not my concern. Now, like I got to defend him a little bit because I think Tucker was saying, well, your concern is X. And he was saying that's not my concern, speaking about what he was saying as far as Ukraine and everything else. Now, some are going to see what he said as, well, the American people being safe and secure over the sovereignty of Ukraine is not my concern. But I think he was talking about what Tucker was saying as far as your concern is about Ukraine getting more weapons and tanks or whatever. So to defend him a little bit, I think that was the context, but I could be wrong. All right. Let's keep on rocking here. Now we have Vivek Ramaswamy. Let's check him out.
You know, my parents came to this country with almost no money. I've gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. And then people tell me, oh, that's because you had privilege. They tell me white privilege. It's sort of weird. It's sort of an interesting. It's kind of interesting.
Do you tell him?
As I take the blindfold off, and now you have your answer. But the interesting answer is, actually what I do tell him, Tucker, is that I did have privilege. I didn't grow up in money, but I had two parents in the house, a mother and a father, with a focus on education and a faith in God. And you know what? That is the ultimate privilege. That if I'm going to enjoy that, every kid in this country ought to enjoy it too. You know, my parents.
Very well said. Very, very well said. I'm impressed by that answer. Shout out Vivek Ramaswamy. And was that it for him? I think that might have been it for him. Okay. Now we have DeSantis. Let's check him out.
This mess a year and a half from now, say, and let's just say it's static. It's where it is right now. What do you do about it? Like, how do you act?
One, Europe needs to do more. This is their backyard. We have NATO countries that don't produce support for their own defenses, and we're supposed to do it, and we're taking away weapons and ammo that could go to respond to contingencies overseas. So we would do more in terms of the Pacific, and the goal should be to bring it to a conclusion. You bring it to a conclusion in a way that's a sustainable peace and that doesn't reward aggression, and you have to be able to use different levers that you have. I mean, for example, one of the leverages I would use vis-a-vis Russia is I would do our own energy exploration and send it over to Europe so they don't have to rely on Putin. I would stop giving Iran a free pass like Biden is because they're funding Russia. So we have some ability to use this, but the goal should be we cannot have a quagmire that goes on for years and years. And seeing Biden put those troops there, I can tell you, we cannot have American troops in Ukraine. That is a total non-starter.
Okay, I agree with that answer was a little bit shaky. I agree with some of it, but not the rest. I agree with him talking about not putting American troops over in Ukraine, of course. I mean, we're not trying to go over there and fight and die for them. Like, what's that got to do with us? But we also really shouldn't. I don't see the big beef between the U.S. and Russia. It appears like it's a business thing, and it's not really about freedom or anything like they want to try to make it be. Let's keep on going here. Was that it from DeSantis? That might have been it. Of course, I will link to the entire summit and everything, more clips and whatnot in the box, but we got limited time right here on this one. Now we have Nikki Haley. This was pretty interesting. She was having a hard time.
Who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline?
I mean, I don't know.
I'm not claiming you did it.
No.
I'm just kidding. No, I don't know. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Do you know who did it?
Seems pretty obvious. It was backed by the Biden administration, I would say. I mean, I think all the evidence suggests that, but I wasn't there. But I mean, that seems like a huge step. This is the largest industrial sabotage in history, sent more carbon in the atmosphere than any act ever. And like, there's weirdly no curiosity about who did it. And I think that's strange. Why do you think?
There's a lot of things that are strange with the Biden administration. This isn't the first one.
I guess what I'm really saying is if you were running against the Biden administration, to do something like that and shaft our closest allies in the world, which would be Western Europe, and deprive them of the energy they need to run their manufacturing sector and destroy their economy, which it is in the process of doing, like, that's a major sin to have done something like that. You just betrayed our allies, and no one on the right is accusing the Bidens of what they clearly did. So I don't know why.
That's a very good question. You kind of putting her in between a rock and a hard place. She's not going to answer that question at all. But it's clear that we did that. You know, it's clear in my opinion. I don't want nobody knocking on my door. Oh, you said something. No, in my opinion, it's clear that we did that. Now, here is another clip from Nikki Haley talking about the election. All right, let's check it out.
As a mechanical question, it's not a trick question. It's just like the mechanics of it, something you're thinking about since you're running. I don't think anyone would say Joe Biden was a great candidate.
No.
Didn't campaign.
He didn't campaign at all.
He was not a figure who commanded respect among Democrats. They made fun of him. I'm not attacking the guy, but that's true.
Right.
Nobody in Washington said, I want my kid to grow up to be Joe Biden. And yet, at the end, he's got 81 million votes. 15 million more than Barack Obama, who, whatever you think of him, was a very talented politician and I think smart. So, like, how did he do that? And what can we learn from that?
Well, what you can learn from it is what we did in South Carolina. I said in South Carolina, if you've got to show picture ID to buy Sudafed, if you've got to show picture ID to get on a plane, you should have to show picture ID to protect the integrity of the election process.
Right, I agree.
So,
and we have to make sure election integrity is something we don't ever stop. You have to continue over and over. We've had some states who've done some great things and they've put voter ID in place, and that's been great. We still have some other states who haven't done anything, and we need to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to. I mean, we saw during COVID, a lot of secretaries of state changed rules without getting state legislative support. We saw a lot of that happening. We saw a lot of mail-out balloting. We've got to make sure we continue to fight to make sure we have integrity in the election process. Because I saw at the United Nations, when you have your people lose faith in an election system, that's the first crack of a country falling apart. We have to keep fighting for this. We have to make sure we get it done.
yes. So when I asked about the 81 million votes, you immediately said things I think I agree with about election integrity. Yeah. So are you suggesting that last election, it sounds like you're saying you don't think it was on the level?
Are you talking about the presidential?
That's correct, the presidential.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we all know that there were irregularities in there and that there were some issues that happened. We know that there was mail-out balloting that shouldn't have happened. Do I think that changed the results of the election? No. I mean, I think President Biden ended up winning the election. But I think at the end of the day, it showed we've got a lot of work to do in terms of election integrity.
So you mentioned mail-in ballots. Would you restrict that?
Okay, so there's more, of course. That was all I have as far as like some of the highlights that I was able to find. If you guys have any highlights from the event, if you watched it, you guys let me know in the comments. But as I close, I want to say this. That event was fantastic. Fox News could never. CNN could never. First of all, it was long. The questions were real, were honest. You could tell it wasn't so much advertiser centric. Okay, you can't ask this, you can't ask that. It was a fantastic event. I loved it. We need more things like this. And I think, as I close, I think these kind of events are going to usurp some of the mainstream media's ability to present presidential candidates. Why would I watch Fox? Why would I watch CNN? Why would I watch any other alphabet letter television station when I know that it's going to be sanitized? I'm not getting the real full thing. I'm getting kind of a dog and pony show. Why would I watch that? I can watch Tucker on Twitter talk more reality in 10 minutes than you're going to see all year on television. I can watch Blaze on YouTube and get real answers from candidates, not anything that's sugar-coated, cherry-picked, softball. None of that was going on during that event. Some candidates did very well. Some candidates didn't do very well. But it's a good test to see what they would do if they get into office. But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? Have you seen the event, the full thing? Whatever your thoughts on the full event, the clips I showed, and everything I saw, let me know in the comments below. You guys know where I'm at. The event was fantastic. If Trump was there, it would have been perfect because I think he'd fit that format very well because it was more raw, it was more real, it was more relatable. It wasn't so adversarial against conservatives, but it was more about the American people. You see, when you're looking at a CNN, they're going to be harsh against conservatives because they don't like conservatives. So it's a matter of trying to get them tripped up and say the wrong thing. But this was more about, hey, the people want this. Are you going to be able to match? The people say this. What is your viewpoint on that? So Tucker did a fantastic job. Blaze Media, the whole staff over there, all the hosts, Glenn Beck, everybody, you guys did a fantastic job. And I want to see more events just like this. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.